Well, as soon as I heard the news that Javier Mille had in fact won the Argentinian presidential election, there was one person who immediately sprang to mind as the person I most definitely wanted to talk to, largely to see the enormous smile that was inevitably going to be on her face. There it is right there. Melissa Albasetti, thank you so much for joining us here on the Aussie Wire. I'd ask you how you are, but I think we already know.
Over the moon. Thank you for having me on the show, Topher. It's a pleasure always, and I'm really excited. I'm very optimistic and very positive. I think this election has going to shift the direction where we were heading, and hopefully it will end up in good port in that direction in Argentina. So I'm very excited.
Well, we of course had a chat here on the Aussie Wire after he performed very well in the primary, and we knew that he was going to the runoff. We knew that he was going to have this opportunity to maybe become the president. Did you ever really allow yourself to believe that it could actually happen, or were you kind of trying to talk yourself down, or how was the feeling leading up to this?
I got the feeling that when he win, not the primary election, but as we said, the party's election,
Mm,
he has to compete with all the parties, of course. He might have a chance.
mm,
Um, and I thought, okay, maybe this is going to happen.
mm,
Why not being optimistic? Because we heard about Argentina, and although the last time I was there, it was last year. I could feel the frustration. I could
mm,
see, the devastation
mm,
in my country. So I'm very excited that the Argentinians decided to leave the fear apart
mm.
because there was a lot of negative campaign in the last election.
Yeah.
And this basically they said, no, no, we are not going to be, afraid of this monster.
Mm,
Peronism has been running the show for more than 20 years in the
mm.
last democratic period, not even before, more than 70 years. So I think they have chosen the right candidate, and hopefully he will do a great presidency.
Mhm. I've previously described Argentina as being the halfway point between Australia and Venezuela, but that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to, especially to Australians who maybe have only ever experienced the relative peace and prosperity that we've had here. Can you paint a bit of a picture of what the realities of life for the average Argentinian have been? I mean, this is a country now with 40% of the population living in poverty. What does that look like?
As I said before, it's devastation. So we used to be rich.
Mm,
We used to, be one of the greatest countries in the world. And after 1930s, everything basically started to ruin. And that was because of populism. So at the moment, in the last 4 years, so as you mentioned, inflation has increased, especially since Sergio Massa, he's actually the treasurer, and he was the presidential candidate for the left-wing party,
mm,
Unión por Todos. So the inflation has risen from, let's say, 44, sorry, 54 to 143. So and
mm,
poverty has gone from 35 to, 43%,
mm,
45%.
mm,
Uh, Meat consumption has fallen. Uh, the minimum pension has decreased. And I think Argentinians realize that there's no vaccine against hunger.
mm.
Um, and that's what's happening. People couldn't afford meals. They have to choose
Yeah.
whether if they eat their lunch or dinner. And yeah, that was not sustainable at all. So violence has skyrocketed, and the country faces negative net reserves, bank reserves, so and it's a state of danger.
Mm.
So hopefully that will come back. We will have a different outcome this time, and hopefully Javier can lead that way to prosperity
Mm.
once and forever.
Well, I've often rejected the notion that you can improve government by just voting better, but I do hope that Javier Milei proves me wrong. I hope that he proves to be the exception, perhaps, that proves the rule. What does it look like, though, a libertarian presidency? What is it that he's been saying or promising or planning to do that makes you believe that his results are actually going to be any different or any better than what Argentina's suffered for the last 70 years?
Well, cutting public spending. I think the most important thing he did was basically fighting the cultural war in the last couple of years, especially in the last 3 or 4 years before becoming a presidential candidate.
Mm.
So that during that period of time, he was, as you might know, on social media a lot, on just like regular media and mainstream media, sorry, and he was educating people. He was educating people, talking to people about economics, talking to people about libertarianism, talking to people about Murray Rothbard, about Hayek, Milton Friedman. And the good thing is that young people who was born maybe probably in the early 2000s, so they lived under Kirchnerism all their lives.
Yeah.
So they all they've known is poverty and misery. And they wanted a different future, definitely, especially when you see people that have a good quality of life overseas. Like there's plenty of Argentinians living in Australia, New Zealand, in Europe, in America, with Twitter, with Facebook, with YouTube. You can access information that was banned before.
Yeah.
So you can see actually how countries are doing better. And you can head to that direction, actually. So we're convinced by Javier Milei that libertarianism and liberalism are the pathway to succeed. So, and it's been proven in Argentina. Like Argentina was the richest country in the world in 1896. And it was because of liberalism. So it's written in our history. So, yeah.
You mentioned younger people, and Javier Milei certainly has resonated with younger people, but it's an interesting trend that we're seeing worldwide. You look at someone like a Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, a whole generation of young men have absolutely resonated with him. Look at someone like a Dennis Prager, again, love him or hate him, an entire generation of young men and women have really connected with him and almost made him their sort of adoptive grandfather. What is it that's causing younger people to be really seeking out these alternative voices? Why do they feel the need? Why are they not happy with the status quo?
Well, particularly in Argentina, I think is because of that lack of prosperity that, as I said before, that you live in Argentina and you just basically see that your salary is not enough to buy groceries, for example. So if you think about it, there might be a worse situation like that. Like this guy is promising something different, something that Australia has implemented, New Zealand has implemented, America has implemented. They are successful countries. So why we're not heading to that direction? And I think this type of people like Javier Milei or Jordan Peterson, they basically understand people's mind and how they can communicate with them. And they are very unique. They are sincere. And that's why people are buying those type of comments or just Google them or anything. They want to learn. They want to know more. And that I think that is happening at the moment.
One of the risks when you make enormous changes to any system, but especially an economy, is that in order to get from where you are to somewhere better, you often have to go through a period where things are very disrupted. Things can often be worse, or at the very least perceived as worse by people. Is there a risk, do you think, that as Javier Milei tries to, and based on what he's saying, very rapidly push through a lot of these reforms, is there a risk that he might actually lose support because of the disruption of the change?
I think it's patience. I think Argentinians ran out of patience at the moment, and hopefully they can understand that to make those changes, it will take up to, if we do things properly, it will take up to 2 years, I think, to implement polarization, if they do things properly. So my fear is if Argentinians basically a lack of patience, then we'll go to the streets and say, okay, what's going on here? You are not giving us what you promised. They are completely fed up, and I think they won't tolerate any other lies. But I think they will understand that this will take a little bit of time to recover.
Well, I certainly hope.
That's the only, and they have to have a good alliance in Congress to get all the new laws and reforms passed, and we'll see what Peronism will do at this point.
Well, Javier has addressed that in an interview with Bloomberg, where they asked him, what will you do if you can't get your reforms passed? And he said he would put it to a plebiscite. Now, under that scenario, hypothetically, and we are only speculating here, but do you believe that the people that obviously have voted him in, 55% plus, this is an overwhelming election victory, do you think that would translate into victories in plebiscites if he were to be putting the specific policies to the Argentinian people?
Yeah, I think they will back him up. Yeah, definitely. The problem is at the moment, to get that plebiscite up and running, has to pass through Congress.
Right. Catch-22.
That's a little bit of a blockage we have there.
Yeah.
But he said, I will do it anyway.
Yeah.
The problem is if the plebiscite comes positive, because it hasn't gone through Congress, it doesn't have any power to get implemented. But what he wants to do is expose what he says about the political case. Okay, people have voted. Have voted. People want these reforms. You politicians, what are you going to do now? Because the people who you represent want these reforms.
It'd still be very powerful politically, even if it was not sanctioned, so to speak. If it was not binding, it would still be a very, very powerful tool. Well, Melissa, I hoped last time we spoke that I'd be able to come back to this story and we'd be able to have exactly this conversation. I hoped for it. I didn't really expect it, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see that the Argentinian people have given the world a wonderful experiment in classical liberalism, libertarianism, and my fingers and toes are crossed, and I hope that things work out really, really well. Melissa Albasetti, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Papa.